Hey guys, so for those that don't know me, Andy Howard is my name, and you might be wondering why I'm in the middle of a field with a bucket seat. Well, I thought I'd do like an extended YouTube video on everything I've been doing for the project Drift Across the World. So everything that I have, from the very start to where I am basically at the moment, giving you guys a bit more of an insight of, the project Drift Across the World. Maybe I should bring it all the way back to how the project came about, and then we'll go up from there. Freezing. Oh, I don't know why I decided to do this outside. So let's start from the very beginning. About 2 years ago, I decided to challenge myself to trek from the UK to Australia with no money and try count on the kindness of strangers to get by. I wanted to show three things. I wanted to show that there was a lot of help in the world if you go look for it. There's a lot to live for, and if you put your mind to it, anything's achievable. And I ended up completing the project and raising over £15,000 for suicide prevention, so supporting the Samaritans and Beyond Blue. So I had no idea what I was going to do when I got to Australia. I just knew that this was the journey and that I needed to make it to Australia, and that was the criteria and the challenge. And when I got to Australia, I got to Darwin, and I'm like, oh, now what am I going to do? So really weird sensation, and being just the other side of the world. And it was a bit surreal, but I learned so much about the world. I learned so much about myself, and it was just a life-changing experience. So when I was in Australia, I didn't really know what to do at all. So thankfully I made a lot of friends, got a lot of jobs, did labouring, did construction stuff. I ended up getting like really good jobs and really good money, and I didn't last at all. I haven't even told anyone about this, but I got a really good job, like unbelievable money, and I only lasted like a week. I turned it down because it wasn't really sitting right with me after everything that I've done and everything that I saw. I really didn't want Australia, if I was going to be there, to be just there to be able to make money. So I basically sat down with myself and I said, do I want to leave Australia with loads of money or loads of experience? And I said, I want loads of experience. So I ended up quitting that job and just working on construction for a while and labouring until I met, which is now one of my best friends, Sarah Bast, and her family have just been amazing. Like, I cannot thank them enough. They took me in, they fed me, they watered me. Sarah is the manager of a hotel out in Melbourne, and she got me a job pulling points, and then I got another job putting up big marquees and ended up playing football, AFL. Just had a really nice time. So how the project Drift Across the World then came about was me and Sarah went to an event called the Adam LZ World Tour, which is a drift event, a global drift event, where they bring professional drifters and drift influencers or drift YouTubers together and have this like drift event. And I had the privilege of working at the very first one in Mondello Park, and then went down to Calder Park then in Melbourne for their Australian tour, and it was so cool to see how big and how popular it was. And I just remember being a spectator queuing up in Calder Park for this event and looking at all the drift cars, and I remember saying to Sarah, I said, I really want to build another drift car, but I can't justify it because I'm only in Australia for less than a year, and it just makes no sense. But I do remember thinking, because I did the last project, I felt like I was kind of only halfway during the journey. So like from the UK to Australia, I felt like I needed to come back somehow. So I was thinking about like maybe getting a camper or driving back, and then it just sparked. The two of us thought about it at the very same time as we're queuing up for this event, about building a drift car and driving it the whole way back to Ireland, competing in loads of international drift events along the world, showcasing the world of drifting. And as soon as I thought about it, I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. And I made the decision right there and then. And the very next person that I told, which I think is still crazy to this day, is a guy called Dave Egan. So the very next person that I told is probably one of the biggest influential people within the drift community that has literally done so much for world drifting. And yeah, the very next person that I told about this project was Dave, and I remember his response was, it's like Drift Week, but like Drift Year or Drift World. And I'm like, that's probably what it's going to be like. And yeah, it was nice to see the lads that I used to work with as well, and yeah, I was just super hyped. So it was a really nice weekend. And then I gave myself, I think, 2 weeks after that, and I announced it to everyone that I was going to attempt to drift across the world. And that was over a year ago now. So let's kind of fast forward, and I'll give you the timeline of from there to where we are now. So after announcing it, I then obviously put the plans in place to be able to try and make this possible. And I've always been the type of person to say that to start something before you're ready and try to figure it out, and either way you're always going to learn. So the biggest thing that I needed to do this project was obviously a car, and I had loads of different cars in mind, but I needed something that I could sleep in, that had enough power, and that was durable and reliable to be able to do this project. So I decided on a BMW E46 Touring or Estate. There I can sleep in it. It has a 3-litre engine, it has a good enough power, and it can be durable and reliable. But the biggest thing about the BMW is that they were sold globally. So the biggest thing that I wanted to be able to do was to be able to get parts around the world. So if I needed a water pump, I could just go into motor factors around the world, or if I need a door because it was bent in from drifting and tandem with people, I'm like, okay, I can pick up one in a scrapyard or maybe even someone's garden. So that was the biggest thing that I decided that I would get this particular car. And in Australia, for those that don't know, the second-hand car market is so expensive. So for this particular car, they were quite rare, but I wasn't able to get one that I wanted. So the only ones that I could find was like an automatic, and the biggest engine I could find was like a 2.5. So I would still need to spend money on a manual conversion to put like a manual gearbox in, and I would still need to engine swap it to a bigger engine, such as 2.8 or 3 litre. So there's more money. But the car itself, without doing anything like that, was between like 6,000 to like, I saw one for 15,000 Australian dollars. I don't know what the conversion rate is, but I remember at the time I looked at it and it was so expensive. So I was looking at them in the UK, and like you can pick them up for like 1,000 to maybe 6,000 pounds, which was like a lot cheaper. So that I was actually working out better if I was able to get the car that I wanted in the UK, and then to ship it down to Australia was cheaper than getting something that I didn't want in Australia. So massive shout out to Fergus Walker, one of my good friends, who set up like a Facebook group for me to, for all his friends and everything, to try get a car for me. So all these people were looking for this particular car, and we managed to find one in Holyhead, and it has a really nice story. So the car that I actually currently have at the moment to do this project, the guy that owned it the guy who owns it got granted one of his Make-A-Wish dreams, and it just has a really nice story behind it. And I as soon as I saw it, I just felt good about the car. So we ended up getting this particular car. So I bought the car while I was in Australia. I bought the car in the UK, never seen it before. And another big shout out to Stephen and Anton, really good friends of mine, who went up and collected the car and brought it back down. So now I'm in Australia with a car in the UK. And again, I planned to bring the car down to Australia, but with my visa and everything, it was running out. So it looked like I needed to go back to the UK anyway. So with the rest of my time in Australia, I just tried to work to be able to get the money, or enough to be able to get myself back home, and try to get as many sponsors on board as possible. So the plan, or the project plan, was always to try get part sponsors to be able to pay for the parts for the car, such as suspension, tires, wheels, steering wheel, so on. And then to be able to fund the project, to be able to get financial sponsors such as an outdoor clothing brand or a service provider like a network provider, and so on. So I'm very grateful to say that I managed to get quite a lot of part sponsors on board, and I'm very, very grateful for them, because at the very early stages, all I had was a story of what I was going to try attempt. And I have very little credibility, and I could show very little return on investment at the time. So I'm super, super grateful for the guys that have come on board, like Grip Royale. They were the first ones to come on board. Then Pit Viper, like these companies that have sent me out products that weren't expecting anything in return, and just really liked my idea and had faith in me and the project. So yeah, I really, really appreciate everyone that has come on board so far, but especially the people at the very start. So very grateful to have part sponsors, but a year down the line and I've still yet to get any financial sponsors. So everything that you see, everything that I'm doing at the moment is all funded by hopes and dreams. So thankfully, when I came back to the UK, I managed to get back into a role of teaching drifting, so tutoring drifting, teaching people how to drift, which was getting me by day-to-day living. But it's more, everything's just going back into this project to try and make this possible. So I'm in the UK now. I've flown back to the UK, and I've still no unit. I have very little tools, and I didn't know what I was going to do, so I needed a unit to be able to work on the car. And thankfully Stephen and another good friend David have went halves on this unit that they said I could put in from then till Christmas. So I ended up driving the car in. We took the engine out. Because that was my only source of transport, I ended up like sleeping in the car for a while, working on the car and trying to get all the parts that I needed to put the car back together. So now the engine is at another location that Stephen is building the engine for. So eventually saved up enough parts to buy all the engine parts. So he's currently working on the engine. And the car, as I'm speaking, is getting transported, because I only had the unit for December, is getting transported to another location with Fergus, who said I can keep the car there for a while. So you have all these different pieces that you're trying to move, and each step is just a step closer to getting this project sorted. But for you guys that haven't seen it, like there's a lot of blood, sweat and tears, like literally crying, gone into this project. And this is what it's about. I mean, I'm in the midst of it now. A lot of people are like, oh, when are you starting the journey? But I literally feel like I've started the journey a year ago when I said I was going to do this project. So every day is a learning curve. I'm very grateful for everything that's happened. Again, learning a lot about myself, learning a lot about communication, about networking, about going to events and shaking hands, and yeah, it's so much. So because the biggest hurdle at the moment is financials and just trying to fund the project, I said, is there anyone, and if there is, who can I speak to that will give me the most amount of information or point me in the right direction to be able to get the funding? So I have been in contact with like Tim Shaw, which for those who don't know, from Car SOS. I've been in contact with him. He's been giving me quite a lot of advice. But the biggest one that I've been trying to get in contact for a while was a guy called Simon Squibb. So for those who don't know Simon, he's the guy that goes around London and like the rest of the world going, what's your dream? And people tell him their dream and he tries to fulfill their dream. And yeah, super good guy. So I said, okay, if I can get in contact with him, he would have the network to be able to try get me in contact with the people that I can collaborate with, that I can not only showcase their products and service and try get them a return on investment, but they can help me and just try get the partners on board that way. So ended up getting in contact with him. I mean, that was an adventure. That was like nearly 10 weeks trying to get in contact with Simon. We're very grateful to be able to manage to get in contact with him, and he gave me his advice. So I really wanted from Simon was to try get me in contact with anybody that I could have a conversation with to be able to get the ball rolling to see if we can work together. And the other thing was advice, or point me in the right direction of where I can go and what I can do and what he advises. So I ended up having a conversation with Simon, and he advised me 3 things. So he said, if he was me, he would do one of three things. He would either continue what I'm doing, that seeking sponsorship and funding is very difficult, like it's a lot of legwork, so keep doing what I'm doing, or stop what I'm doing and try fund the project a different way. So try get in the funds using a different method, or just leave, just go. Whatever money I have in my pocket, the car is ready, just leave. And I think the biggest thing, that the third one about just leaving, is that I don't want the project to seem like the last project where I'm the charity. I don't want to get into like the next town and try seek funds for fuel to be able to go to the next town. I want to be the one that's supporting Make-A-Wish. So I think that's the biggest problem with, or the biggest issue that I have with just leaving. Number two was to stop what I'm doing and to try fund the project another way. I am thinking about that. I am really thinking about that. And the first one was to keep doing what I'm doing, and I'm a year down the line with 0 financial sponsors. So it's left me at a bit of a crossroads at the moment of going, okay, well, where do I go with the project? What do I do with the project? So over this Christmas period, I'll be taking a bit of a break from socials. I'll be really thinking about what I'm going to do in the new year, what my next step is going to be, and yeah, I'd love to hear your opinion about it. What do you think I should do, or what would you do in my situation? And I mean, that's kind of where I'm really at now at the moment. It's just a lot of work to be able to get to this position. I've learned a lot. I really hope that you're enjoying it. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, and I'll be honest with you, I can give you the figures if you want. Before I did a massive budget before I came back to the UK, and it was over 100 grand is what I needed to be able to start the project and finish the project. And that's obviously the car, tires, fuel, shipping the car, all the paperwork, passports, visas, everything. So it's a lot of money. But thankfully now, having got the car, it brings everything down a little bit more, and how I've managed to budget everything and where the car is at. But at the moment, the budget is at 84 grand. I need 84 grand to be able to finish the project. And it's a lot of money, but I think this is the challenge. I mean, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And I really want to show that dreams are possible, and that if you put your mind to it, anything is achievable. But it's like, at what time scale? So like, if I said, you need to learn French, you don't know anything about French, you need to learn French in the day. Very difficult to do. But if I gave you 20 years to learn French, very, very doable. So it's like, at what time scale do I give this project? And I can tell you now that I'm like obsessed about this project. I don't think about anything else. I don't do anything else other than create content or network or literally anything for the project. So I'm very, very invested in it, but I just need to know what my next step is going to be. So that's why I'm going to take a bit of a break over the Christmas period, step back away from the content and really just think about what my next step is going to be. I mean, again, like I'm saying, if I manage to be able to get a tire sponsor on board, that brings down the cost. If I'm able to get a fuel provider on board, that brings down the cost. So yeah, it's a lot to think about, but I really do hope you guys are enjoying the journey so far. I hope that you're enjoying the content. I'd like to also hear your opinions, so if you have any suggestions or anything at all, even what you would do in my scenario or my situation, love to hear it all. And yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more, but I wanted to keep this as simple as possible, like just a conversation in the middle of a field. Currently I'm here in Ireland, back in the hometown, and yeah, it is very, very cold. So I'm going to stop the old video here. I'm going to go in and get a cup of tea and try edit this video, get it out as soon as possible, and I will see you all in the new year. But thank you so much for listening to me rant in a bit of a field, and I will see you soon.